Hey everyone, Pivot here. Welcome to part 4 of my question and answer videos. In this video, I'm going to be covering the social side of questions as well as future plan questions. So let's get rolling into the final Q&A video. All right, number 1, were you lonely? Did you have company? So yes, I had company the entire way. I actually only ever hiked one day completely by myself, and that was from Acton to Aqua Dulce. I saw people that day, but I never actually hiked with anyone. Other than that, I hiked, oh, and sorry, my first day back in NorCal leaving Chester, I also hiked alone that day. So I only spent 2 days that I would consider being alone. The rest of the time I did have company, whether that was in the form of trail family members or other people joining me for a section or part of the day or for an entire day just for the day. But even though I was never truly ever alone, I was pretty lonely. I would say the desert section of the trail, so from Campo to Tehachapi, in the grand scheme of my hike, was my loneliest point in time. I was looking for some pretty deep, solid connections that never really happened. I did have a tramily, but I was never really quite a good fit with them. So I just always felt pretty lonely, even though I was with people. I never felt like I actually belonged to anybody or with anybody until NorCal, when I hooked up with Leonie. Prior to that point, I was just with people and around people, and they were wonderful and great in their own ways. I just didn't belong to any of them, and yeah, that made me feel pretty lonely. How many solo hikers did I come across? Lots. The majority of the people that are out there are solo. Even though I started with my friend Barb, I was still technically a solo hiker, because everybody is out there, unless you're part of a partnership or a couple, you're really there for your own unique experience. And so everybody kind of starts off as a solo hiker. Most form bonds and friendships and families, but there are people that choose to stay solo throughout the entire time, and I did run into a few of those people, and the majority of the true southbounders in Washington, most of them were solo as well. If we came across southbounders in a grouping, 9 times out of 10 they were the snowboers or the flip-floppers, the people who had started going north and flipped and started going south because of the snow. So in our year they became dubbed snowboer. But in Washington, if people were by themselves, they were true southern hikers. Did I have a better time relative to how big my group was? Yes and no. So I would say that the larger the group I was in, the less of a good time I had. Which really, it surprised me, but it shouldn't have. I am typically better in smaller groups of people. I'm way better one-on-one, maybe 3, max of 4. Spirit. So it really depends on the people that I'm with. If it's more than 3 people, whether I'm going to be enjoying myself or not. And I find it really funny because heading into this, I really wanted a large, happy tramily. And so I was really excited when we grew from just Barb and I into 5 people fairly quickly. But honestly, the bigger our group got, the less enjoyment I had overall. Don't get me wrong, I had some great times with them. We had lots of laughs and things, and individually they were all great. But I don't know why I thought that I would enjoy a large group, because I'm just not a large group person. So yeah, I definitely, the smaller my group, the more enjoyment I had. When it was just Leone and I think that was the most fun I had on trail. So yeah, it just, for me, it didn't work being in a big, large family. Has doing this given me the urge to do even longer trails, or am I wanting to go back to shorter trails? I still like shorter trails, and I am going to be doing some shorter backpacking trips this summer. But my heart's definitely in the long distance through hike. I just can't get enough of it. So a 5-day backpacking trip is great, and I will enjoy it and I will love it, but I'm never going to be ready for that to be over. And experiencing this hike the way that I did it, if I had answered this question back in like September, October, I probably would have said, I'm good, I got my fix, I don't need to do that anymore. But that's just not the truth of who I am. The longer the trail, the better. The longer I'm out there, the happier I am. So yeah, I still want to do long distance through hiking. I still think that I prefer that over the shorter hikes. How did I handle bathroom time when hiking with a tramily? So when we met up with Moneybags and Sunshine, they had this beautiful term of phrase that was checking out the geography, which basically meant I have to go to the bathroom, I'm going to find myself a private spot in the woods. And it was great because everyone knew if you just said, hey guys, going to check out the geography, everyone, and then like you would go and everyone would know what that meant. Everyone would avert their eyes and let you go off into the bush privately. So it really overall wasn't really a huge issue. Typically as you're hiking, I mean, I hiked fairly closely with Leone most of the time. But in the desert with the family that I had, we were always kind of spread out. We would camp together, but we wouldn't necessarily always be clumped together as we were hiking. So, I mean, you just step off the trail, try and find a big tree or boulder or a bush or whatever to kind of hide behind and do your business. As you're hiking a long trail, I think it's usually easier. I found sometimes certain camps were really hard to find a private space, especially if it was a busy campground and everybody was kind of camped where you thought you might, use the geography. So I wouldn't say that necessarily hiking with a tramily made that hard. I think the more people at camp, the harder it is to find a private space. But hiking along the trail during the day, that's not usually an issue. How did I stay in the right frame of mind to continue during the hardest times? That's a tricky one. Because if I was alone, like the days that I was alone, like Acton to Aqua Dulce was my worst day on trail, mentally and emotionally by far. I was in a ton of pain. I was alone. It was just after Baden Powell, and I had my emotional breakdown there. Lost my entire trail family leading up to Baden Powell, and I just kind of stuffed all my feelings about it. So I was not in a good frame of mind, and that day was really, really hot. It wasn't necessarily challenging, but the climbs just felt so much harder, and I found for myself that if I'm feeling down or I'm in a lot of pain, I'm not good at hiking alone. It's not good for me. I don't have anyone to encourage me. I kind of really need even just one person to be there too. If I don't want to hike for myself, I'll at least keep going for them. So I found when I joined forces with Leone, there were times and places where I was like, oh, this sucks, I'm done. I don't want to finish this climb. I can't do it anymore. And if I had been alone, I might have given up on myself, but again, where I wouldn't necessarily do it for me, I would keep going for her. So for me, having a partner really was paramount to keeping me in the right frame of mind during hard times to keep going. And not only that, but like to encourage me through the areas that were scary for me. You know, she would turn around and say, "You got this, you can do this." And just having somebody reassuring me that I was able to get through that hard spot was really important for my being able to do this hike and get through some areas. What was hands down my biggest challenge of the whole trail? I would say, I guess it depends on what aspect you're looking for in this question. If you're looking at physically, what was the physical challenge on the trail itself? Or my biggest challenge mentally or emotionally, socially. So physically, the trail itself, the biggest challenge I faced was hands down Mount Baden-Powell. Just the amount of snow that was on it, the decision alone to go up the mountain or take the highway. I chose to go up the mountain. I really wanted to see the highway in this apocalyptic state that it was in. But I had missed San Jacinto, so I really wanted to do Baden-Powell. So I chose to go up the mountain, and we hit a wall of snow. So like there was no switchbacking nicely up the trail this year. It was from about 3 switches up, it was straight up climbing. And that was physically challenging, using your ice axe to literally like pull you almost straight up. It was really challenging, but I'm also really proud of myself for doing it. I got to a point where I realized that I wasn't going to be able to come back down the way that we were going up, just due to the steepness of it. But that was okay until we got to the other side and we had to go down and there's no trail, and it was descending anything is always harder for me than climbing it. And that day is where I fell and got my back injury that took me off trail. I stabbed myself in the leg with my ice axe. It was just an emotionally challenging day. It was mentally draining, physically draining. The guys, Phil and Magpie, they got us through it quite well, and like I commend them even to this day for holding themselves together and getting us through that. But it was an emotionally taxing day on everyone, and we were lucky we got through it as a group together, but it had its challenges and it had its dangers. And me personally falling and then stabbing myself, like it that day broke me. Baden-Powell broke me. When I look back at it now, I totally should have taken the highway. But yeah, it was definitely my most challenging day on trail. Now, if you look at the biggest challenge on like a social level or a mental, emotional level, my biggest challenge was finding the right kind of connections. I set out in the desert to be really social and have all these friends and all these connections, and I just thought that I would connect with people kind of naturally, and that I would find those people that wanted to do this hike with me. And that just didn't happen. The people that I was around, again, individually, they were all really great, but none of them were really the right fit for me. I never found that person that, like, when I needed to stay an extra day in Acton, that they stayed with me. Or, I never found anybody who'd be like, okay, you stay, but then we're gonna meet up, 4 days down the trail, or I'll wait for you here, or whatever. Like, that just never happened in the desert. And I found managing my expectations versus the reality of what was happening was a real struggle. I just didn't think that it would be that hard to find my person. And I was very, very blessed to find it in Leone in Chester. And I just wish that I had found her or found that in the desert, because when I look back at my desert experience, it's like this weight or this negative energy is just hanging over that memory because I didn't have the kind of connection that I was looking for. What did I find more difficult than I expected, and what did I find easier than expected? So I think I kind of already answered this in the last question. I found finding those personal connections a lot harder than I expected it to. I mean, I had a really great group of friends at home, so that I hike with all the time. So I just felt like this will be easy. I'll just meet a few people, we'll connect, and we'll hike the whole thing together, and it's going to be great. And that just did not happen. So yeah, I found the social connections a lot harder than I expected. What did I find easier? I think maybe just the day-to-day routine. I fell into it quite quickly. I fell into that 15 to 20 mile a day rather quickly, I think. Yeah, the actual hiking itself was, I think, easier than I thought it would be. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. What happened to Hot Mess? And in parentheses, she just kind of disappeared. So yes, she did just disappear off of my videos. I never really talked about it. I think I made reference to the day we got to Cajon and went to McDonald's. I made a quick comment about how we hiked 340 miles just to get to McDonald's just so that she could quit. But that's pretty much all I said. And I didn't bring it up in my videos for a number of reasons, but the biggest one was that she had asked me not to say anything to anyone about what was happening with her at the time. So she had decided to go home. When we were in Big Bear, like leading up to Big Bear, she had been struggling. Our relationship with each other had become kind of strained. Started to realize that what worked for us as hiking partners at home was not working on this trail. It's a different, through hiking is a different mindset. It's a different thing you're doing. And so we just weren't gelling together anymore. The draws from home were really calling to her. And so at Big Bear, she announced that she was thinking of maybe going home and wanted to use that next section from Big Bear to Wrightwood to kind of figure it out. And then through that week, she had decided that, yeah, she was going to go home and call it quits in Wrightwood. And so that's why she disappeared, because she went home. And out of respect for her at the time, I didn't really say anything in my videos. I didn't say anything online anywhere because she had asked me not to. So out of respect for her, I just didn't. But that's what happened to her. The next question is, what happened to Ketchup, or Marit? How come we stopped hiking together, and why did we not rejoin somewhere else? This is a little... It's not difficult for me to talk about, but for the longest time I was trying to spare people's feelings. I was trying not to say or do anything that would influence how somebody looks at somebody. So while on the trail, again, I didn't really talk about it. I muttered a lot of things to myself on the camera as I was hiking because there was a lot of things going on within our tramily, and I edited all that out because I didn't want to kind of put it out there at the time. But basically between Big Bear and Wrightwood, our tramily fell apart. So Helena had stayed behind in Big Bear. She needed extra rest, and then subsequently within a week she ended up getting off trail. Barb, as I mentioned, decided to go home. Catch Up in Big Bear told me while we were there that she wanted to hike the rest of the trail, me and her. But at the same time entered into a relationship with Luke. And long story short, within 2 days of leaving Big Bear, Marie never hiked with me again. She hiked her own hike. She made her own choices. Her and Luke went off trail, did their own thing for a while. When they came back, they were always behind where I was. Because Barb was going home and they were nowhere to be found, going into to Baden-Powell, I had to make arrangements to hike with somebody else. So I joined forces with Phil and Laura, and then subsequently Magpie and Phoenix. And they just never made it a priority to catch up with me. If I waited for them in town, they would then be like, well, we want a rest day now. And I'd already had one or two, so I need to keep moving. So it was just never, I felt like I got ditched. I think it was really cruel to tell me that you want to hike the rest of the trail with me to subsequently never hike with me again just a couple days later. I thought that was really cruel to do. I do believe that she was just hiking her own hike, and I don't know that she really thought about what that was doing to me. And that's okay. Everyone's out there to hike their own hike. I just wish that either she hadn't said that or had offered an apology or some kind of explanation, but that was never given. It was always acted as though there was nothing wrong and nothing had happened. So yeah, Catch Up was always there, usually a couple days behind me, but yeah, we never did hike together again. And even the day we left out of Tehachapi, we caught a ride together and then never really saw her again. What happened to the group? Well, I just explained that. So Helena stayed behind in Big Bear and then got off trail. Hot Mess got off trail. Luke and Catch Up stayed behind me. They were always a little bit behind and never made any effort to actually hike with me again. So that's what happened to our group. We just dissolved. And I think that was for the better. Again, from my perspective, I wasn't a good fit with them, and we all kind of wanted different things, and that's totally okay. So yeah, our little family just naturally, I think, dissolved. So I got this question. I think it was Woodsy who posted this question, but it was Leonie the jam to your peanut butter? Yes, she was. And I love this question because Leonie's the one who got me onto the baby food as a jam replacement with my peanut butter instead of actually using jam. She suggested I try baby food and it worked. But yes, Leonie was the jam to my peanut butter. Me and her were two peas in a pod out there, and for as much as she saved my hike, I think I saved hers, and yeah, I don't think either one of us would have made it to the northern terminus without each other. So what are your thoughts on the fact that you had gone so far, spent so much time doing this, but when made it to Canada could not be truthful in saying that I completed the PCT? And I pulled this question from a video that was somewhere, I think, in NorCal or maybe even before Tehachapi. I knew right after Baden-Powell that there was no way I was going to attempt the Sierra. The heightened state of emotions and just like being on all day and being like in that survival mode. Every step mattered. Every step was significant. I couldn't imagine what it did to me in that one day. I could not imagine being in that heightened state day after day after day, the way that the Sierra was this year. So I knew back then that I was going to end up having to skip the Sierra. I just knew I wouldn't be able to go through it. So I think that's where this question kind of came from, because it was followed up with, if it was me, I would probably just quit and come back another year. And so they just wanted my thoughts on that. And I put so much time and effort into getting ready for 2023. And I knew before even going to Campo that there was a good chance I wasn't going to be able to do the Sierra. And at first I was really bummed about that because I truly wanted to do the whole thing. But I am a Christian. I believe in God and I believe in Him and His protection and the things that He does. Everything happens for a reason. So the epic snow happened for a reason. If I didn't get to the Sierra, it was for a reason, and I was okay with that. I wanted my hike to be what it was that He wanted me to see and do and experience, and I think that I did that. I got to see NorCal in a way that most people don't. Most people get the NorCal blues. They don't enjoy it. For whatever reason, they think it's boring, and I think probably after the Sierra, yeah, it probably would be, but without having seen the Sierra, I absolutely loved NorCal. I think NorCal's the bomb. It was the best part of the whole trip for me. So am I disappointed I didn't see the Sierra? Yeah, like overall for sure. But do I think that I should have quit because of it and come back another year to do the whole thing? No. First of all, I wouldn't be able to afford to. And second of all, I wouldn't be able to ask all the people that supported me and all the things that I had to do in order to get here. Like, I rented out my house. I found homes for my cats and my dog. And to ask people to say, okay, I've changed my mind on this year. I think I'm going to try next year. Like, I just couldn't do that, right? And honestly, it doesn't bother me that I can't say I completed the entire PCT. Most people can't say that. There's only a small percentage every year of people that actually do the whole entire thing. Most years people don't do the whole entire thing. So I'm okay with being one of those people that didn't do every single mile. Did I still hike the PCT? Yes. Did I still through hike it? Yes. If you want to call me a lasher, a long ass section hiker, whatever. You do you. You call me whatever you want to call me, but I consider myself to be a through hiker of the PCT. I did hike the PCT. Not once will the words completed come out of my mouth in that when I'm referencing that. So I don't think that I am lying when I say that I did it. And I'm okay that I didn't do the whole thing. I also ended up skipping Oregon. So I still have half the trail to do, and I am determined to one day go back and do it. But in the meantime, I still through hiked the thing. So no, doesn't bother me. Okay, so that's it for social questions. Let's move on to future plan questions, or, somewhat related. Okay, so I just kind of went over that I didn't do the Sierra and I also didn't do Oregon. So, will I go back in 2024 or this year? While I was on the trail, full intentions was yes. Leonie and I had, when we decided to skip Oregon, the deal was we would go back in 2024 and do Oregon, and then together or separately, whatever, eventually go back and do the Sierra. It didn't take long after completing the trail that Leonie, sent me a message and said, I don't want to do Oregon next year. And life has happened. You get back home and you get back to work and you do things and, plans kind of change. So unfortunately, no, I will not be back on the PCT in 2024. It's up in the air for me on 2025. If I don't get back on the PCT in 2025, I am making a solid, firm decision now to go back to the PCT in 2026. and either redo the whole thing or just do the Sierra and Oregon, the parts that I've missed. I kind of leaning more towards starting back at Campo because I do want to do over in the desert. Knowing what I know now, being as comfortable as I am in my own skin now, I think that I would handle the desert socially in a much healthier way, and I would really like a do-over so that that cloudiness and that heaviness that I feel about the desert can be lifted. But I definitely want to do the Sierra and Oregon in 2026. Would you do anything different that you learned from this year? I think that I could probably hike a little bit farther, faster. I think that I could maybe dial back some of my 0 days. Like if I did it right, I wouldn't need 4 days in Wrightwood like I took, or I wouldn't need time off in Acton and then again in Aqua Dulce. Like just certain things I think would be different. The biggest thing that I would do differently, aside from little details like logistics, is I wouldn't go into it frantically seeking those connections. I would just go in, do my thing, hike the way I want to hike, and then let the connections come naturally. Will I return to do the rest of the trail? I already covered that. Yes, my intention is to come back and do the rest of the trail again, whether that be in 2025 or 2026. 2026 is kind of my cutoff that I'm putting on myself so that I actually do it. So we'll see. One of those 2 years is what my current plan is. Any other projects to keep the channel going? Well, I do backpack and do other adventures every year, so I do have some fun things coming up this summer that I'll be videoing and putting on the channel. But I'm also really hoping to start a podcast. I want to start a podcast and then put it out on like podcast, but also film it so I can put it on my YouTube channel. And it's basically going to be kind of challenging the social norms. I just have a lot of like, when people say, or the experts, or like, the big guys like Dixie and Darwin and Yogi, and don't get me wrong, they have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, but they also have a lot of influence. And like Dixie, I love her. I'm not knocking her at all. But I find that when certain people say things, it becomes a rule. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Like, being told you must wear a long sleeve shirt, it'll keep you cooler. That's not true. Or everyone gets their trail legs. You'll be able to do 30 miles. That's just not true. Not for everyone. So I want to do a podcast that kind of challenges those socially accepted norms that we're being told that can actually kind of ruin your thru hike if you're believing you're going to make 30 miles and then your body doesn't do it. Like, you should have known up front. Somebody should have said up front, guess what? Might be a chance that you may not get to 30, and that's going to be okay. And you just have to adjust your expectations of how much of this trail you're going to do or how long it's going to take you to do it. Right? So that's kind of my plan for the podcast. If I get that up and running, is just to challenge the norms and get new hikers to think of it differently so that they're more well-rounded and informed when they get out there. Was it therapeutic to make a video series, or did it stir up restless emotions? Definitely both. I absolutely loved making my videos. I loved taking video, not only just for myself and my own memories, and like I was looking back at it and I'm like, wow, it didn't rain nearly as much in Washington as I thought it did, or what my memory reminded me that it did. So I love that I did that just for myself, and I love that I was able to bring my family and friends along by videoing, and everybody else, there's so many people that I don't know started watching my videos, and I think it was really great. So yeah, it was very therapeutic to do. But it definitely stirred up restless emotions. And at the same time, I did a presentation, and just writing it and collecting pictures to go with it was also, it stirred up a lot of emotions, and it really got me that fire reignited for wanting a do-over and to complete the miles that I didn't do. So that leads into, would you do it again? If so, what would you change? Kind of already answered that. Yes, I want to do it again. And what I would change is those things I already mentioned, like mileage, number of zeros, not forcing connections and forcing myself to stay with people just so that I'm not alone. I would want that to be a little more organic. Any advice, lessons, or pearls of wisdom for anyone wanting to document their PCT hike? That was followed up by, this might be the nuts and bolts or social media aspect versus focusing on your own needs. So I would say, if you want to document your PCT hike, absolutely do it. But keep in mind, for me, I think that you should always keep in mind to do it for yourself. Video what you want to video. Talk about what you want to talk about. And when you're editing, keep in or take out anything that doesn't sit well with you. I left in a lot of my emotional states. You saw me crying a lot because I wanted to present a real and authentic vision of this trail. It's not sunshine and roses all the time. It's freaking hard. And I've just seen so many other channels where it just shows the highlights, and especially the long form videos. It's just about the highlights and how wonderful it was. And it's really hard and it's really emotional. And I wanted to leave all that stuff in. So I would just encourage you, if you're going to document it, to be authentic to who you are in it. Don't start filming certain things thinking about your audience. Just stay true to you. And as far as like filming and editing and everything on trail, again, stay true to you. I found it very distracting and really hard to edit videos while I was actively hiking. So I ended up making the choice not to do it because I didn't want the videoing. The videoing was part of my hiking, but I didn't want the editing to take away from my experience out there. And the more you're in your tent just editing, the less you're interacting with the people around you and all that kind of stuff. So just keep that in mind. Don't do anything for the sake of your viewers. Remember to do it just for yourself. Your viewers will understand. Which area of the trail do you dream about now? Well, NorCal holds my heart. I dream about NorCal all the time. I loved it. But what really weighs on me again is the desert. I really want a do-over. I really do. I want to remember the desert with the fondness that I remember NorCal. So yeah, that's actually the part that I dream about the most, is how the desert could be different. And have you gone through the post-trail blues or experienced post-trail depression? Yes. I don't think it really hit me until this past month. I kept myself pretty busy when I got home. I eased my way back into work. I purposely didn't fully integrate back into society right away because I knew that that was going to be hard and probably trigger some kind of depression. But I've been sad about it being over since the day it was over. And I've been sad about, I felt fully aligned out there. I felt like I'm just supposed to hike all the time. That's what I'm supposed to do. And yet I'm forced to being in town and having a job and living a life that I don't really want or necessarily like. So I have always struggled with that. My heart belongs on the trail, and so not being out there has been really hard. But I don't think I felt really like the depression side of things until I started working on my PCT presentation. That really started to trigger some of those depression type feelings. But the trail will always be there, and I can always work towards being back out there. I had started working part-time, temporary, and I have just rolled that into full-time, more permanent. Not because I want to live a life of working full-time, but because my bank account was telling me that, hey, if you want to go on another big adventure like this, you're going to have to start saving money again. So I don't live to work, I work to live. So making the decision to go back full-time was so that I could continue having big adventures in coming years. So that is how I am working through my post-trail depression. So that's it for the actual questions. I am going to make another video announcing what my 2024 summer plans are. And I hope that you are really excited for what I have to come for this channel. And yeah, so thank you again so much for following along. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. And I can't believe I had to do it in 4 sections, and quite a few of them are pretty long. But yeah, so thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to sharing my 2024 plans with you. And I'm really looking forward to videoing them and sharing them with you. And I hope that they inspire you to get out and maybe come to Canada and visit this beautiful country that I call home. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you again for joining me, and pivot out. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.